Pollinator gardens are a relatively new concept brought on by the decline of pollinators. A pollinator garden is a garden designed with the needs of pollinators in mind. This includes providing food such as nectar and pollen, as well as a habitat for pollinators.
A pollinator is an animal or insect that causes plants to make fruit or seeds by moving pollen from one part of the flower, the anther, the male part, to another part of the flower, the stigma, the female part. This pollen then fertilizes the plant and allows the plant to reproduce by creating fruit or seeds. This process is called pollination. Sometimes, pollination can occur through self-pollination, such as wind or water. Other plants require a pollinator to work as the vector to move pollen either within the flower or from flower to flower. Common examples of pollinators include bees, butterflies, and hummingbirds. These species make great pollinators because they get their food from the flower of the plant, which means they often brush up against or come into contact with the flower or pollen. Other insects like spiders, flies, and wasps can also be considered pollinators because they occasionally use the flower as a hiding place and may also transfer the pollen and fertilize the plant.
It is estimated that more than 1,300 types of plants are grown commercially around the world for food, beverages, medicines, condiments, spices, and even fabric. Of these 1,300 plant species, about 75% are pollinated by pollinators. This means that pollinators are responsible for bringing us more than 1 out of every 3 bites of food we eat or beverages we drink. Pollinators are essential for the reproduction of at least 2/3 of flowering plant species, including many of which are now endangered. Pollinators pollinate a wide variety of crops with an estimated global value of $153 billion. This means that pollinators not only have an ecological importance, but also have an economic importance.
Pollinator numbers are declining for a variety of reasons, all of which can be attributed to human impact on the environment. Aggressive agricultural practices, such as growing crops in large fields and maximizing the land use of crop growth, decreased the number of natural food and habitat resources for pollinators. Other issues with agriculture include the use of pesticides and other dangerous and poisonous chemicals that directly affect many species of pollinators. Pollinators are also subject to a number of diseases, parasites, and pests that can affect their ability to fly, reproduce, or pollinate effectively. Many parasites and diseases are highly contagious, and some ultimately result in the death of the pollinator.
To create a pollinator garden, you should plant a variety of plants that bloom from early spring to late fall. This is important because pollinators need nectar early in the spring, throughout the summer, and even into the fall. Using native plants is better because they are more suited to the local climate, soil, and the local pollinators. It is also essential to choose plants that have not been treated with pesticides or insecticides. If you must use these chemicals, you should look for the least toxic materials possible and spray at night when pollinators are not active.
To attract butterflies, a pollinator garden should include plants that provide food and nutrients for the caterpillars such as milkweed. For bees, leaving a dead limb of a tree can provide an essential nesting site for native bees. Adding a hummingbird feeder can provide essential nectar resources for hummingbirds. The feeder is often red in color to attract hummingbirds and should be filled with 4 parts of water to 1 part sugar. Adding a shallow dish with stones and water provide a safe landing spot for bees and butterflies to drink.
With all of this in mind, it is important to understand the impact of a pollinator garden. It is beneficial to both humans and wildlife. The pollinators use the flowers as a food source. This allows humans to harvest almost 1/3 of our food in the same process. It is also a type of garden people enjoy having. People like the idea of supporting the local insects and birds. It is easy to install and great for the wildlife. People have reported that seeing the busier garden is something that brightens their mood and makes them feel like they are doing their part in the pollinator conservation. It is important for pollinator activists to set up flowers and other plants that are attractive to specific insects that pollinate regularly. Bees, for example, like flowers that have sweet fragrances and bright colors. They like blue, purple, white, orange, and yellow flowers, to name a few. Some examples of these types of flowers include the buttercup and the black-eyed Susan. Butterflies also like plants such as the verbena, Mexican sunflowers, bee balm, and butterfly weed. The insects also have many common plants that they both pollinate. Pollinators are an essential aspect of life on this planet, which means that building a pollinator garden is one of the best things that we can do to help support them.